Good afternoon, Sir Ruiz. So today we are Group 9 from 1 NUO4 and we are going to present a case study regarding the infectious diseases manifesting in the nervous system. But before everything else, I would first introduce my group members. So I am Ashley Egita. I have here with me Asley Diongco, Kobe Ergiza, Sean Estudillo, Julian Derico, and Hani Enriquez. And so let us proceed to our presentation.
So as for the signs and symptoms, it can range from asymptomatic to severe. First, you have asymptomatic, which most people that is infected with West Nile virus do not exhibit any symptoms. Second, we have mild symptoms such as fever, headache, body aches, joint pains, vomiting, diarrhea, and rash. And lastly, for severe symptoms, we have high fever, neck stiffness, stupor, disorientation, coma, tremors, convulsions, muscle weakness, vision loss, numbness, and paralysis. So before we proceed to the epidemics and outbreaks reported in the Philippines, let us know first where is the virus most diagnosed. West Nile virus is primarily transmitted by mosquitoes, particularly the Culex species. While the virus is more prevalent in parts of Africa, Europe and Middle East, North America, and West Asia, there have been instances and concern about its presence in Southeast Asia, including the Philippines. However, documented epidemics or significant outbreaks in the Philippines are still uncertain and or often mistaken for other viruses. Next, we have population at risk. So certain populations are at risk for contracting the West Nile virus and experience severe symptoms. First, we have the elderly individuals, people who are over the age of 60 or more susceptible to severe disease. As for people's age, their immune system tend to weaken, making it harder for their bodies to fight off infections, including the West Nile virus. This phenomenon, known as immunosenescence, leads to a decreased production of immune cells and a less effective immune response. And next is those who are immunocompromised individuals. Immunocompromised individuals have a weakened immune system due to various factors, making them more susceptible to infections like the West Nile virus and more likely to experience severe symptoms. This includes those with conditions such as cancer, diabetes, hypertension, and kidney disease, and as well as organ transplant recipients.
So for the differentials, so here are the infections, diseases, or syndromes that are similar to the West Nile virus infection. So first of that would be the other arboviral diseases that are also listed in the textbook. So these include the St. Louis encephalitis virus, the La Crosse virus, the Powassan virus, Jamestown Canyon virus, and the Eastern Equine encephalitis virus. And upon searching and research, other diseases or causative agents and infections that are similar to West Nile virus in terms of symptoms would be Japanese B encephalitis. So they are both biological vector in terms of transmission. So others would be varicella, herpes simplex 1, dengue, enterovirus, Lyme disease, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and other bacterial meningitis infections. So common symptoms of these infections would be myalgia and also fever. But they are all same in terms of symptoms, but in treatments, they are all far different from each other.
As for the diagnosis tool or procedure to identify the infection, disease, or syndrome, for the clinical impression, we first have the initial assessment based on clinical signs. So when a patient comes in with symptoms like fever, headache, or body aches, and especially if they show signs of confusion or seizures, doctors often think about West Nile virus. They also consider if the person has been around mosquitoes recently. This first assessment is essential for deciding what to do next. So in our case study, the patient reported that he had no recent travel, but mentioned spending time outdoors in the evenings without using a mosquito repellent. And there also has been a recent increase in mosquito activity in his area, which is correlational to our initial assessment for West Nile virus. Next is for the imaging methods used. So if a patient has serious neurological symptoms, doctors might use imaging techniques like CT scans or MRIs. So these tests help us visualize the brain and can show inflammation or other issues, helping doctors understand how severe the infection is. Next slide. Next, as for the immunogenic testing or antigen test, so one of the common tests for West Nile virus is the immunoglobulin M antibody capture test or the MAC-ELISA. So this test looks for specific antibodies in the blood or spinal fluid, helping to tell if a recent infection has occurred, such as detecting the West Nile virus specific antibodies in serum or cerebrospinal fluid. Next. And as for the gold standard or diagnosis, the best way to confirm a West Nile virus infection is through a test called reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction or RT-PCR. So this test looks for the virus genetic material in the blood or spinal fluid, making it the most accurate method for diagnosis. Next slide.
So for the risk factors, West Nile are more susceptible to older adults and young children. There is also risk for immunocompromised individuals, particularly those with HIV or those with AIDS, organ transplant recipients, and those undergoing chemotherapy. Pregnant women is as well and breastfeeding of infected mother as they will likely transmit the virus to their babies. Also, climate conditions as well, especially during the cold and dry seasons, as the arthropods are more abundant in their population during these seasons. Other risk factors are blood transfusion, living near areas with stagnant water as these areas are serves as mosquito breeding grounds. And spending time outside without sufficient mosquito repellent also increases the risk. Next slide, please. For the gold standard diagnosis of drug of choice for West Nile, most treatments are supportive, as currently there is no satisfactory treatments available. Supportive treatments are immunoglobulins such as polyclonal intravenous immunoglobulin or IVIG for short for reducing immunocompression of patients, as well as interferon as well such as interferon alpha 2b is also used as a supportive treatment for patients with West Nile. Next slide please.
So moving on with the statistics of the virus in the country, as of now, there is no comprehensive data on the internet specifically documented on the West Nile virus in the Philippines. However, historical records point to a significant event, which is the first reported outbreak in the year 2002. During this outbreak, there were 12 individuals from the Larazabal clan in Ormoc City were afflicted with the virus. Interestingly, doubts arose regarding whether West Nile virus was indeed the cause of their symptoms. So why is that? The reason lies in the similarity of West Nile virus symptoms to those caused by the Japanese B virus, which was already present in the Philippines. Due to the limited data, there likely aren't any specific mortality and morbidity reports focused solely on the West Nile virus in the country. But according to the news reports from the 2002 outbreak, the fatality rate associated with the West Nile virus in the Philippines was approximately 15%. However, it's essential to note that this fatality rate is based on a single outbreak and may not fully represent the overall picture. Additionally, only 1% of those infected with West Nile virus develop severe illness. This statistic highlights the variability in clinical outcomes. Most cases result in mild symptoms or even go unnoticed, while a small portion experience severe neurological complications.
Okay, thank you very much. Now let's finally proceed to the levels of intervention applicable here in our case study for the West Nile virus. All right, so firstly, for the primordial intervention, our objective here is to prevent the emergence of risk factors. All right, so to prevent the emergence of risk factors in populations. So here we are going to promote healthy environments to reduce the risk of vector-borne diseases. And here we have Dry Up Seminar, which stands for Diminish Risky Yards Through Urban Planning. So it is our original initiative aimed at promoting healthy environments to reduce the risk of vector-borne diseases. This program focuses on educating communities about effective urban planning strategies to eliminate stagnant water areas that serve as mosquito breeding sites. Through this seminar, participants will learn practical measures to maintain clean and safe yards or yung environment, thereby decreasing the incidence of diseases such as dengue and malaria. For instance, implementing urban planning techniques to identify and reduce areas where stagnant water accumulates, preventing mosquito proliferation and such. Moving on, next slide, please. Thank you. Now we have the primary prevention. So for the primary prevention, The goal here is to prevent the disease before it occurs by eliminating or reducing the risk factors. So a possible way for us to do this is by reducing exposure to mosquitoes through using personal protective measures such as mosquito repellents, off lotions, mosquito repellent patches, or like stickers, etc. Another way is also by wearing protective clothing, such as wearing long sleeved shirts, long pants, particularly during dusk and dawn when mosquitoes are most active or peak. Next up is um, reducing mosquito breeding sites around homes, such as emptying and standing water from flower pots, gutters, buckets, langana, pet water dishes, and such. All right, thank you very much. Now let's proceed with our secondary prevention. Next slide, please. Thank you. So for our secondary prevention, we are trying to have an early detection and treatment of diseases to halt its progression. So here, we may have surveillance and screening. So basically, we may have public health campaigns to educate the community about symptoms and the importance of seeking medical care early, and at the same time, have a screening, such as like a blood and organ donor screening to prevent the transmission through transfusion and transplantation. All right, next slide, please. Thank you. And now, lastly, for the tertiary prevention, here we may reduce the complications and improve the quality of life for those who already have the disease. So here we are going to focus more solely in the medical care and rehabilitation. So for our case, we may have or provide supportive treatment for severe cases such as those who are hospitalized or under hospitalization, those with intravenous fluids, pain management, and respiratory support. Moreover, we may also have rehabilitation services for patients with neurological impairments to improve upon their physical and cognitive functions. All right, so with all these preventive measures in a community and personal protective measures, it's important to know that there are no West Nile virus vaccines licensed for use in humans. Hence, the absence of a vaccine urges us to follow these preventions for the West Nile virus, which is perfectly applicable for our patient in our case study. That's all for the applicable levels of interventions. Thank you.
And that is the end of our presentation. Thank you for watching.